Alright, guys. I had to stop watching that before I got distracted. So this shit just got posted like 5 minutes ago, and we were supposed to cover Russia shit, so I guess this is the time.
Ukrainians are saying involved 1,100 pounds of TNT equivalent.
The attack comes hours after peace talks between the two countries fell apart. Meanwhile, Russia's launching new strikes of its own.
The bridge is a key supply route for Russian forces in Ukraine.
And claims from President Volodymyr Zelensky that Russia is now deliberately targeting Ukrainian civilians.
After Operation
Oh
Spiderweb,
no.
Russia
Oh,
is
that didn't age well.
Putin knows more attacks are coming.
Come on,
and
man.
that's
We were
exactly
just
why
saying
he's
good
having
stuff about
Russian
Ukraine.
authorities check every
God
single
damn it.
trucks. Well, that's causing miles-long traffic jam, and Russian people are complaining about it.
Anyway, Middle Village. There's a road blocked there for some reason. We were driving right through the fields right now, really bouncing around. We're back on the pavement. There's a huge traffic jam of vans. I don't know how many kilometers it's been going on. It's a mess.
Well, guess what? Putin's instincts were right. He just had the wrong idea. The next attack was not coming from trucks, but rather drones. More specifically, water drones. This is what happened to the Kerch Bridge connecting Russia to Russian-occupied Crimea. Here's the clip.
Oh man.
Now, as you guys know, the Kerch
Whoa,
Bridge
they
is a
just blew
symbol
that
of
crap
Russian
up.
power in Crimea. First of all, of course, it connects mainland Russia to occupied Crimea, and on top of that, it's critical for the war. Russia uses it to support its military in southern Ukraine. It's like a lifeline for their army in that region. So, if
Hold on, Chad, give me 1 second.
Gucci, like holy crap!
Class is big.
Football game is
Holy
actually
shit.
crazy.
This radicalizes so.
Okay, so it's good. Sorry, I just had to make sure the audio was good on these last two videos because I just realized that it was
To
a
burn
little
even
low.
more calories, he added daily carbs.
Okay, yes, that's good.
Ukraine were to take out the bridge, or
Sorry,
even
guys, sorry.
if it damages it just enough so it
Had to
cannot
scare
be
for a
used,
second.
Putin would be in a big trouble. It would be a massive
Oh, we are.
logistical problem.
Well,
Without
man,
the
since we
bridge,
did all that
Russia
stuff, we
would
can do the
struggle
bull
to
rip.
get weapons and supplies to Crimea and southern Ukraine. Their military
Let me
would
go
just
get this pen back to my parrot. Come on. I'm mad. I'm back.
collapse
Sorry,
in
sorry.
that region. Secondly, it would be a huge public embarrassment for the so-called second largest and strongest military in the world that Ukraine has been able to hit
Yeah,
them
that's
days
true.
after day.
I mean, I would say it's like a tie between Russia and China for like, strongest. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's just Russia flat out through and through. I would give it as like a contender status for second place.
Remember, this attack is just 2 days after the biggest attack carried out in Russia since World War II. And of course, more
Yeah, that's crazy.
importantly, without the bridge, Crimea becomes open for Ukrainian attack, and that's something Putin cannot afford. If Putin loses Crimea, Russia loses this war. Before moving forward, if you guys can please
Isn't
hit that
this what this
subscribe
whole
button down
war is
below to
about to
keep up
begin
with
with?
all the geopolitical news like this one. Let's begin. This is exactly why this attack was such a big deal, and it was something Putin was not expecting at all. This was just 2 days after Ukraine's strike.
I don't think at any point in time Putin was really like expecting like a a small country like Ukraine to actually be putting up a good fight, actually contending against them. I think everybody's shocked.
25,000 kilometers.
Especially simply because of the fact that it's already been like 10 years basically since they started fighting. Like, well, I guess you want to say beefing. My voice just cracked. Beefing. and now, you know, they're really like in the war, dude. Like now they're really fighting, bro. Like now both sides are actually attacking each other back. You know, I guess you could kind of say it's like blow for blow, fart for fart.
Kilometers inside Russia to their Belaya base, and now they're targeting the Crimea bridge. So here are a little bit more details from the attack. Just like the attack 2 days ago, this took months to prepare, and it was the same agency, SBU, the Ukrainian Security Services. Operatives planted explosives on the support pillar, and we'll talk about this in just a second because this is extremely important. The attack happened at 4:44 a.m. today Ukrainian time when the first device detonated. Now, as I'm recording the video, we also have some unconfirmed reports from the Russian Telegram channels that there were multiple explosions that happened hours after the initial explosion. As of now, we haven't had a respectable organization confirm that, but as we get more information, we'll be sure to share it with you guys. But anyways, let's get back to the report. The underwater supports were damaged at the seabed level. The blast, equivalent of 1,100 kilograms of TNT. The bridge is structurally compromised and on the verge of collapse. Now here we have channel's favorite Chuck Farr sharing more details about exactly how this attack was carried out. As you guys can see from the graphics on your screen, the charge's placement indicates that Ukraine likely targeted or retargeted a previously damaged pile assembly. Each pile will have to be inspected and damaged ones will have to be replaced. A complex and expensive task.
I would imagine
and
so.
More importantly, while this repair is going on, the traffic on the bridge is paused. No one can enter the bridge and no one can basically exit Crimea.
Mad traffic,
That's a
probably
huge deal
commerce
for
is being
Russia, who's
fucked
been
up.
using the bridge to
You know what this is probably doing to their economy, Dio? This is probably swindling their
basically
economy right
supply
now.
their military, as we have covered. Now the drone they use, the underwater drone, we actually have some graphics from none other than
underwater
Ukrainians.
drone?
Now this was released when the drone was
Some
first
graphics?
announced to the world. This is not the graphics from the attack, but it's highly likely that the same drone
Why are we
was
calling
used.
it? Would it be graphics
Now,
of
you
the
can see
attack?
the
Then
drone
would it
from
just be
your
actual
screen. It
footage?
costs roughly
Why are we cutting?
$450.
Why are we calling footage graphics? They're like, oh, these 4K graphics are insane. This is just a recording.
$1,000 per drone, and it is all remotely piloted underwater. It's nicknamed Marishka, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, but it's a prototype of multi-mission long-range
Marijois, like from One
underwater
Piece?
vehicle, UUV, capable of strike
You watch
missions
One Piece?
against
They got
Russian
ideas from
warships
Oda?
and maritime infrastructure like the bridge. It has
Yeah, my nose
electro-optical
is itchy.
targeting and infrared cameras. This provides it with thermal, low-light video, and navigation and satellite uplinks. It also uses electrical motors, which provides it with low noise propulsion. Now, I'm not a structural engineer, but it seems like Ukraine picked their target very carefully. It wasn't just some random pillar, which already...
If you expect me to believe that they're gonna waste resources like that and just hit some random thing, hell nah. It definitely had some, like, you know, engineer and like geographical engineer there to, you know, show them, and structural engineer too, probably tell them exactly where to put the best spot, just like on some, you know, Luke Skywalker about to blow up the Death Star type shit, you know, like Princess Leia telling them exactly where to put that ion cannon blast.
would have been damaging enough, but they picked a very
that
important
torpedo
pillar.
blast?
From what I
Ion
understand,
torpedo.
it was a load-bearing pillar. That means Russia is too afraid to use the bridge right now.
Before I
so
get
all traffic
corrected in
has
the
been
chat.
paused. And this is how Russian propagandists are reacting to this attack, especially considering that this came just 2 days after one of the biggest attacks Russia has ever experienced. Now, I want you guys to hear the anger in the voice, so we're not gonna dub this clip.
Сука! Сука, блядь! Чё теперь это стерпим, что ли, нахуй? Сколько можно терпеть, блядь? У меня уже нервы, нахуй, на пределе, блядь! Въебите нахуй уже по Киеву, блядь! По центру, нахуй! Орешником, блядь! Заебали, нахуй, терпеть, блядь! Куколды
Crashing
ебучие!
out.
Now,
Like
as
a
if the
cuckold.
attack wasn't bad enough, you guys remember the
Yeah, my
clip
man is
I showed you at the
crashing
start
out.
of the video? This clip? Well, guess what? That clip came from a Russian camera that was attached to the Crimea bridge. That means that Ukraine has been able to not only attack the bridge, they've also been able to hack or at least access all the infrastructure that Russia has put in.
That's so
to
embarrassing, dude. Not only are they getting effed in the A, but they're getting like literally tiddlywinks with. They're literally playing tiddlywinks with their security intel.
Called protect that bridge. Apart from the very fact that a strike on the bridge support
Everybody's
missed,
literally got their
what
fucking
also
thumbs
draws
up their
attention
noses.
is the enemy's free access to webcams installed there. It's likely that the entire video surveillance system of the strategic facility was compromised, and it is unknown how long this had been going on, writes a military informant on a Russian Telegram channel. The bad news doesn't stop there for Russia. This isn't the only intelligence failure Russia had in last week. In fact, they were planning a major attack before the negotiations that started on Monday. And we'll get into the negotiations in just a second. But before, I quickly want to go over the attack that Russia was planning that somehow failed because of the Ukrainian attack, the Operation Spiderweb, that was carried out just 2 days ago. Russia planned Operation Juice Lighting, largest ever cruise missile attack on all of Ukraine for the night of June 1st, to force Ukraine's hand at Istanbul the very next day. Ukrainian drone destroyed many of these very bombers already fueled hours before they were to take off. I also want to point out this information is not coming from a pro-Ukrainian source. It's coming from a pro-Russian source, so they were likely publishing this.
This is actually happening, yeah.
Why
It's
Ukraine
dead
should
ass.
surrender because Ukraine cannot fight against Russia. Well,
The
guess
fuck do
what?
they want? Why would
Ukraine
they wanna
surprised
surrender?
Russia so badly that this operation was never carried out. This information was published on Kremlin-funded and controlled outlet Tsargrad on May 31st, one day before Ukraine's Operation Spiderweb. The article was then deleted on June 1st when Russia lost one-third of its strategic bomber fleet, with Russia's operation for the night aborted. The largest air-launched missile attack on Ukraine took place on December 29, 2023. That day, Russian aircraft, including the very bombers Ukraine destroyed yesterday, launched at least 108 air-to-ground missiles of various types, murdering 58 and injuring over 160 civilians. If Russia planned its largest missile attack on Ukraine for the night before the Istanbul talks, Operation Spiderweb's destruction of bombers hours before takeoff prevented devastating mass casualties among civilians and incalculable destruction of infrastructure across Ukraine. Clearly, Spiderweb was a great operation, not just in terms of hurting the Russians.
I'd say it was pretty successful. I mean, they hacked their shit. They fucked up their bridges and their infrastructure and possibly even their economy right now. And they messed up their drones. I mean, they messed up their planes. Basically, like, destabilizing them. In, like, one attack, I had to say.
Capabilities, but also in terms of protecting Ukrainian civilian lives. And now we have more details on how it was carried out. Now, some of you guys may already remember, but President Zelensky shared some details right after the operation was concluded. And he shared how almost everyone who took part in the operation from the Ukrainian side had been safely evacuated from Russia even before the operation started. And on top of that, the whole planning of the operation took place in a building that was right next to the FSB headquarters. So clearly a big slap in the face for Putin. Well, today we have more details about how exactly trucks carrying Ukrainian drones ended up right next to Russian air bases. Here it is. Russian media describes the logistics.
And what I mean to say, I'll specify them buying plots of farmland by military outposts and installations. Like, bro, you're not slick, dude. We know what the fuck you're doing.
Of the Ukrainian operation. Investigators questioned the truck drivers whose vehicles were used to launch drones. A 55-year-old named Alexander Z said the truck belonged to 37-year-old named Artyom. Some time ago, Artyom got an order from a businessman in Murmansk to deliver 4 frame houses from Shalom to Kola Peninsula. The two agreed on a price and Alexander loaded the cargo and hit the road. Along the way, an unidentified...
Some time ago, I got an order from a businessman in Murmansk for using to...
caller gave him instructions over the phone when to stop and where to park. His final stop was Rosneft gas station near a military airfield in Murmansk. The drones launched from there. A similar account came from 61-year-old Andrei M., another driver working for
Andre the Giant.
He was transporting frame houses to this region. But when he parked near a roadside cafe in Shaloy, the drones began launching straight from his truck. The other drivers reported the same pattern in Raznan and Ivanovo region. Once, 46-year-old Sergey said that he was hauling a modular home from this region when, while driving into Razan, the roof of his truck tore open and drones flew out. The fourth truck used in yesterday's drone attack on Ivanovo Air Base was loaded into the same region. According to the driver, it too was registered to Artyom. Bazaar reports that investigators have opened a terrorism case. They are now searching for Artyom, reportedly a native of Ukraine. And as we know from President Zelensky's statement just 2 days ago, he said everyone who was involved with the Ukrainian security services has been safely evacuated from Russia. So Russians have no one to actually blame who is inside Russia. So what are they doing? They're blaming the United States. Many Russian critics are saying that because of a treaty that Russia has signed with the US, treaty called New START, both countries, Russia and US, are required to park their bomber jets in the view of the satellite. So basically in public, not in protected structures.
Why?
In reality, this is just yet another excuse Putin is trying to come up with to blame another country for his own failures. And I say this because the excuse the Russian propagandists are giving just doesn't make sense. Critics of Ukraine's attack on Russian bombers claim that Russia had to keep its bombers in open because of
that's why you're trying to say that shit, because that's exactly what you did, and you got
New
caught
START
lacking.
treaty requirements. This is not true for two reasons. Number one, New START does not require that. And number two, Putin suspended Russian compliance with New START in 2023. So even when they come up with excuses, they don't care to check
on his own merits,
if that excuse lines up with reality. Same way
you're
how
not a part
when
of it,
Russians are trying to protect their bombers, they don't care to check if the bombers are actually secure. They're not much for details. And they're also not much for facing the reality.
What I said like 2 videos ago or something.
Russian military is getting hammered by
like Russians are literally shoot now, ask questions later.
Russian negotiators in
think about the consequences later.
Asking for a complete surrender from Ukrainian armed forces. Here are details of the peace memorandum, aka Russia's demands, that Russian negotiators presented to Ukraine during negotiations in Istanbul. The demands are full withdrawal of Ukrainian armed forces from the regions that Russia claims. Important to point out that a lot of these regions, Russia does not completely occupy. So they want Ukrainians to just give up territory that Russia has not won, all the while Russia is losing in the war. Second demand, international recognition of Crimea.
These are a lot of demands. Ukrainian neutrality, electricity out in Ukraine following the signing of peace. A ban of redeployment, Ukrainian armed forces. A ban on redeployment. Ow, redeployment, except for withdrawal operations. A ban on hosting and deploying nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Fair. A ban on the supply of Western weapons like Intelligent. Lifting all sanctions. A waiver of mutual claims related to its... I feel like it's good. The Russian is by no means an ultimatum.
Donbass as part of Russia. Fourth, Ukrainian neutrality. Fifth, elections to be held in Ukraine. Sixth, I think, a ban on redeployment of Ukrainian armed forces, except for withdrawal operations. Sixth, a ban on hosting and deploying nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Seventh, a ban on supply of Western weapons and intelligence.
Probably the most important
Eighth,
one.
The lifting of all sanctions and a refusal to introduce new ones. And last one, a waiver of mutual claims related to damages caused during hostilities. Again, as you guys can tell from the demands, this is not a peace memorandum by any means. Russia wants Ukraine to surrender, all the while Russia cannot beat Ukraine. This is where I want to remind you guys of a great speech that former president...
Can you imagine fucking, some kid is bullying in school and, you beat the crap out of him? And while you're beating the crap out of him, he's telling you, alright, dude, if you back down now, I'll tell everybody that, it was like a draw. I'll tell everybody that I let you win. Like, what are you talking about, bro? You're getting your ass beat right now.
Soviet Union.
Now let's set the record straight.
And, like, everybody's watching,
no
too.
Argument over
it's
the
like,
choice between peace and war. But there's only one guaranteed way you can have peace, and you can have it in the next second. Surrender. Admittedly, there's a risk in any course we follow other than this, but every lesson of history tells us that the greater risk lies in appeasement. And this is the specter our well-meaning liberal friends refuse to face, that their policy of accommodation is appeasement. And it gives no choice between peace and war, only between fight or surrender. If we continue to accommodate, continue to back and retreat, eventually we have to face the final demand, the ultimatum. And what then? When Nikita Khrushchev has told his people he knows what our answer will be. He has told them.
And a good thing that a good example of this would be like the Patriots. Like, look what happened, dude. We gave them an inch, and now the government's in everything, dude. They're probably watching the stream right now.
That we're retreating under the pressure of the Cold War, and someday, when the time comes to deliver the final ultimatum, our surrender will be voluntary, because by that time, we will have been weakened from within spiritually, morally, and economically. He believes this because from our side he's heard voices pleading for peace at any price, or better read than dead. Or as one commentator put it, he'd rather live on his knees than die on his feet. And therein lies the road to war, because those voices don't speak for the rest of us. You and I know and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet
me liberty
as to
or
be
give me
purchased at
death.
the price of chains and slavery. If nothing in life is worth dying for, when did this begin? Just in the face of this enemy? Or should Moses have told the children of Israel to live in slavery under the Pharaohs? Should Christ have refused the cross? Should the patriots at Concord Bridge have thrown down their guns and refused to fire the shot heard round the world? The martyrs of history were not fools. And our honored dead, who gave their lives to stop the advance of the Nazis, didn't die in vain. Where then is the road to peace? Well, it's a simple answer after all. You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay. There is a point beyond which they must not advance.
Now, lastly, I want to show you guys some satisfying reactions from Russian
Facto
media
mundo.
after Ukraine wiped out Russian air bases and Russian bombers. Here it is.
These blasts that have taken place and these attacks on our core infrastructure and our nuclear infrastructure, this is systematic testing to see until which point we will put up with this. This is a preparation for nuclear war. This is the testing of other methods of.
Do you fucking hear this coward, dude? Do you hear this guy? This is not a preparation for nuclear war. This is you guys getting your ass beat by a smaller country that's now fighting back, and you guys can't handle it. So now, instead of just taking the loss, and just taking the loss and being honorable, like any other normal nation would have done, now you're just trying to pull up Pakistan. Trying to be like, oh yeah, that's gonna escalate to nuclear war. No, that's only gonna escalate if you escalate it to that point, brother. You're the one with the nukes here. You're the one that's just gonna incite other nations to fucking nuke you right after. Like
knocking out our nuclear triad. Yours truly has been talking about this for a long time.
Выбивания нашей ядерной триады, о которых и ваш покорный слуга говорил очень давно и в кругу.
It's been discussed in the circles of professionals for a long time. There is nothing new about this, but now it has started. Now we have to revise how well our nuclear triad is protected from being impacted by these means, and perhaps to make some adjustments to our legislative framework, because they are simply necessary.
От вот таких способов воздействия на нее и, наверное, внести еще некоторые корректировки, потому что они просто напрашиваются в нашу законодательную базу. Потому что нам теперь придется.
Realizing that the West has much more potential, now we will have to resort to preventive strikes, as opposed to retaliatory counterstrikes, because we may not be able to conduct a retaliatory counterstrike if these sorts of.
Like, you could say whatever you want about America, but we don't just we don't try to just take over other nations. Like, you could say whatever you want and say that we get involved and we supply this, or, we get involved in the politics, but dude, that's literally not the same as actually trying to, annex, invade, start a war, take over this place and call it, the 50th. Like, can you imagine what it would be like if we just out of nowhere invaded Canada and literally forced them to become the 51st state? Like, what the fuck?
Means are being used. It can be compensated only with them being preventatively knocked out, down to nothing. There is no other way. And their entire territory as a buffer zone, and controlling everything else throughout the entire territory of Western Europe. This is what I can say.
Больше ничем. и зоной безопасности на всю территорию, и контролем всего остального на всю территорию Западной Европы. Вот это то, что я могу сказать.
Простите говоря...
By the way, pardon, talking about what had happened, Sherry writes that videos that come out from there are being filmed by army conscripts. Can we execute this conscript by shooting? Bring out this dirtbag and execute him right in front of the formation as a traitor of the motherland who is simply working in the interest of the enemy. How did these trucks get through? Who has inspected them? This phrase alone. Oi, I didn't know what I was transporting in the truck. Where did you pick it up? Who loaded it?
Oh, man.
I don't know.
You don't even think to check it.
This phrase, it was blindly transported.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. You telling me that you didn't even know what the fuck you had in your truck, and you're supposed to be like a, army intel person or you're a driver. Like me personally, a driver always knows what the hell is in his car. And if you don't, then you're an irresponsible driver. I'm sorry. Like if you don't know what's in your car and what you're transporting, because you don't know if you're transporting something that, if you make the wrong bump, it could like explode. Or it could, like, burn a hole through the ground, and, if it spills over, burn a hole through you or something. Like, you literally don't know, or it could break. Or if you speed up too much, it could set it off. Like, you don't know.
You didn't look inside? When you got the papers, they didn't open it and show you? Don't play dumb.
They didn't check it, verify it.
How did you pass the inspection points, the weigh-ins? How did it all happen? In the 4th year of the war, who will be held responsible for this?
Вот все как.
Это на 4-й год войны. Это кто за это будет отвечать?
YouTube just dropped a mind-boggling announcement. Why? You got sign up for this boot camp by clicking the link in the description.
That's crazy. Yeah, they're probably tight right now. They're like rolling in their graves. All right, let's check out the other one. Hold on. Another one. This one. I think this is what we covered already, actually. Yeah, I think it's this one. Okay, sorry, I got.
Ukraine says it carried out
large. Yeah, we already watched the other drone thing.
Drone attacks on multiple air bases.
I thought that was Paki Sharma, whatever her name is. For a second, I saw like the
it says
pink
Operation Spiderweb caused $7 billion in damage.
Operation
This was
Tum
devastating
Tum
blow to Russian strategic aviation since June
whoops, forgot to like the other video.
Ukraine claims to have hit more than 40 Russian bombers in what the country's security service says is a large-scale special operation aimed at destroying enemy bomber aircraft.
The world is swaying on the edge of chaos, as at any moment things can escalate quickly into a full-scale nuclear war. Sometime in May 2024, Dmitry Medvedev, deputy chairman of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, issued a bone-chilling threat on social media. If NATO sends troops to Ukraine, Russia will unleash nuclear strikes that will extend far beyond Ukraine's border. He labeled it a global catastrophe that no Western leader could escape. Fast forward to today, and the situation has only grown more serious.
Vladimir Putin,
Russia's current president,
actually, let me just pause it. Hold on. I'm gonna go put this away. I don't want it to,
has been ramping up nuclear threats, conducting military drills to prepare for the use of non-strategic nuclear weapons. The tension is undeniable, and the risk of nuclear war feels closer than ever. But what does this mean for you? How would a nuclear war between Russia and the United States impact your daily life? The answer is nothing short of terrifying. It wouldn't be just about distant explosions. It would start with an invisible attack, electromagnetic pulses that would cripple everything from your phone to the power grid. Within minutes, the world as you know it would come crashing down. So let's dive into what a nuclear war between Russia and the US would look like, step by step. From the moment the first missiles are launched to the terrible effects that follow, we'll examine how it would impact your life, your community, and the world in a lasting way. To start things off, Putin has been using the threat of Russia's nuclear arsenal to pressure the West.
Hopefully, though, it doesn't ever come to that, because
over its support for Ukraine. Russia has taken some alarming steps. It's put its nuclear weapons on high alert, testing new nuclear capabilities, as stated by Putin. Russia announced plans to deploy tactical nuclear weapons to Belarus. This is the first
We'll go check on the food.
time Russia has placed nuclear weapons outside its borders since the Soviet Union collapsed. As tensions continued to rise, the situation grew even more alarming in November of 2024, when Putin approved an update to Russia's nuclear doctrine. Many experts believe this move has lowered the threshold for nuclear use, making the threat of nuclear war even more serious. The stakes are higher than ever, and understanding the implications is crucial. The threat of nuclear war is growing because Russia is becoming more aggressive with its nuclear weapons strategy. In recent years, Russia has taken a bolder approach, especially when it comes to its missiles. Its strategy depends on advanced missile technology, particularly missiles launched from submarines. These weapons are designed to be extremely fast and precise, allowing Russia to strike quickly with devastating power. One of the key locations for Russia's nuclear operations is this naval base on the Kamchatka Peninsula. This base stores some of Russia's most powerful submarine-launched missiles, including the SSN-6, SSN-8, and SSN-18. These missiles can travel long distances and cause massive destruction.
What are they with a long-ass name? The SSG-27379?
Russia would likely send submarines into the North Pacific and Arctic Oceans to launch these missiles at the United States. Russia's goal would be simple: strike America before it has a chance to fully respond. While Russia's nuclear capabilities are formidable, the United States has developed advanced systems to counter such threats. The US and NATO have built a sophisticated response system designed to detect and stop a nuclear attack before it can cause too much damage. At the center of this defense is the DSP, the Defense Support Program satellites, which are operated by the US Space Force.
From Star Wars.
These satellites are constantly orbiting Earth, scanning for the heat signatures that indicate a missile launch. If Russia were to fire a missile, the DSP satellites would detect it almost immediately, giving the US precious minutes to prepare its response. The United States nuclear arsenal is always ready to launch at a moment's notice, a state that experts call high trigger alert.
Taxes are for?
This means thousands of American nuclear missiles can be launched instantly. If Russia were to attack, the US president could order a counterattack within minutes, before the first Russian missile even reached American soil. This rapid response aims to prevent Russia from launching a first strike, but it also means that once the process starts, it can't be stopped. While the US relies on its rapid offensive capabilities to deter attacks, it also depends on a defensive shield to protect against incoming threats. The US also has a defense system known as the Ground-Based Mid-Course Defense, or GMD. This system is designed to intercept incoming nuclear warheads while they're still in space, during their mid-course phase. The GMD relies on 40 ground-based interceptors stationed at Fort Greely in Alaska. These interceptors are strategically positioned to intercept missiles launched by Russia.
That's what our taxes are for.
However, the GMD system is not perfect. In tests, it has only been about 50% effective, meaning that half of Russia's missiles would still likely get through. And with hundreds of intercontinental ballistic missiles possibly heading for the US, even a 50% success rate leaves America vulnerable to major destruction. The first sign that a nuclear war has started might not be a loud explosion or a bright flash of light. Instead, it could be something as ordinary as your phone suddenly losing power. This is the work of an electromagnetic pulse, or EMP weapon. EMP weapons are designed to cripple a country's infrastructure without directly harming people. They detonate high above the Earth's surface, releasing gamma rays that ionize the air molecules below. This ionization creates powerful electromagnetic pulses, a
Can you
burst of
get cancer
energy
from
that
that?
fries anything electronic. Power grids, communication networks, and even the electrical systems in cars are all vulnerable. In an instant, the modern world as you know it would vanish. The effects of an EMP attack would be immediate and widespread. Imagine waking up to find that your smartphone no longer works, your lights don't turn on, and your car won't start.
Those $100
Traffic
you
lights
just spent
would
on
go
your phone
dark,
bill,
causing
gone.
chaos
That's
on the
dumb.
roads as
Doesn't
drivers
work no
panic
more.
and crash into each other. Hospitals, which rely on electronic equipment to keep patients alive,
Mad
would
people
face
would die instantly.
life-threatening failures. Ventilators,
Yeah.
heart monitors, and other
Because
critical
their life
devices
literally
would shut
depends on
down,
technology.
putting countless lives at risk. Even water supplies and sewage systems, which depend on electric pumps, would stop functioning. The country would plunge into darkness, and the chaos would be unimaginable. But the EMP attack is only the start. The biggest threat comes from the indirect deaths it would cause. Without power, hospitals would have a hard time treating patients, and many would die from injuries or illnesses that could easily have been treated. Car accidents would increase dramatically as drivers lose control of their vehicles, especially those with electronic systems. Public transportation like trains and subways would stop working, leaving millions of people stranded. Factories would shut down, disrupting the production of essential items like food and medicine. The economy would collapse almost instantly, and society would
First
fall into
aid
chaos.
supplies.
For you, the EMP attack would mean losing everything that makes modern life possible. You wouldn't be able to call your loved ones to check in on them or access the internet for information. The power grid would be down, leading to supermarkets quickly running out of food as supply chains break down, and banks would close, cutting off access to your money. The world would feel like it has been thrown back into the Stone
It would
Age,
literally just
but
be
with the added
caveman
terror of
days,
knowing that nuclear missiles are still on the way. The EMP attack is designed to weaken the country before the real destruction begins. This image here shows the range of an EMP
So you can't
weapon,
fight back.
depending on the height it detonates at. By shutting down communication and transportation systems, it would make it harder for the government and the military to respond to the crisis.
To escape,
Emergency
yeah.
services
Or
would be
for the civilians to
overwhelmed,
escape.
and the chaos would make it nearly impossible to coordinate a rescue effort. For you, this would mean being completely on your own, with no way to know what's happening or where to turn to for help. In the minutes after the EMP attack, you might feel a sense of eerie calm. The world around you would be silent, except for the distant
like a
sound
breakdown?
of panicked
What would
voices. But this calm wouldn't last. Within 15 minutes, Russia's ICBMs would be
Instant ending.
mid-flight, closing in on their targets. These missiles would target major cities and military bases, which are often chosen carefully. These places are vital because they house important infrastructure and government facilities, as well as military personnel and command centers.
It's basically a
The
matter
aim
of who
these attacks
fires. It's literally just a matter of who fires the first
is
rocket.
clear: to destroy the U.S. government and military so they cannot respond or rebuild quickly. The immediate effects of a nuclear explosion are almost impossible to imagine. When a nuclear bomb goes off, the first thing you notice is the fireball, a flash of light so bright it would make the sun seem dim. Anyone within a couple of miles of the explosion would be turned to ash,
The man-made sun.
gone before they even realized what had happened.
Yeah.
The heat from the fireball would also burn.
I'd rather be one of those
skin,
people.
even from 7
You have
miles
time
away.
to react. You just instantly
if you were looking
disappear.
right at the explosion, the extreme brightness could badly
If you
damage
think
your
about
eyes.
it, that's probably like best case scenario. If you're in a situation where you're about to be nuked, that's probably the best people. It's probably like the most luckiest people. Because you don't have to suffer. You just, 1 minute you're alive, the next you're just disintegrated. You're gone. Deleted.
Making you go blind, either for a while or even forever. After the blast comes the shock wave. This powerful blast of air spreads out from the explosion, crushing buildings, flipping cars, and launching debris at deadly speeds. The shock waves travel far, breaking windows, knocking down walls, and destroying almost everything in their path. If you were outside, the blast could throw
Assuming you
you
do
in
survive?
the air or trap you under piles of rubble. Even if you survived
Radiation
the explosion,
poisoning.
the destruction all around would
Possible
make it nearly
cancer.
impossible to find safety or help. If you were unlucky enough to be near the blast, your survival would depend on how fast you reacted. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention advises that the best way to stay alive is to turn away from the explosion, shut your eyes, and drop to the ground. You should lie flat on your stomach and put your hands under your body to shield your vital organs. You'd likely feel 2 shockwaves,
Under
the
your
first from
body?
the explosion and the second from the air rushing back in afterwards. While the heat
Yeah.
from the blast is still dangerous, lying flat
The
could help
afterburst
protect you from
shockwave.
flying debris. Surviving the initial blast is only the beginning of your struggle. The aftermath of the explosion would bring even more dangers, such as radiation, firestorms, and the collapse of society. The world would be in chaos, and survival would become even harder. But in the immediate moments following the
Looting.
attack, your only priority would be to stay alive. The CDC's survival guidelines offer a slim chance, but even following them perfectly, the odds would still be stacked against you. The immediate aftermath of a nuclear strike is a terrifying scene of destruction, suffering, and confusion. For those who survive the initial blast, the nightmare is far from over. The following days and weeks will be filled with challenges like radiation poisoning, firestorms, and the collapse of society, turning the world into a dangerous and unrecognizable place. Radiation poisoning is one of the most immediate and terrifying threats after a nuclear explosion. If you're close to the blast zone, you could be exposed to deadly radiation within seconds. Acute radiation syndrome, or simply ARS, would set in quickly, and symptoms like nausea, vomiting, and severe skin burns would appear within hours or days. As the radiation continues to harm your body, it can destroy organs and cause them to fail, which often leads to death. Even if you survive the initial effects, the long-term consequences can be just as deadly. The radiation can increase the risk of cancer, damage your DNA, and even cause changes that might affect future generations. The radioactive fallout, the particles left in the air after the blast, would spread for miles, contaminating the air, water, and food. Breathing in radioactive dust, eating tainted food, and drinking contaminated water would expose you to even more radiation, making survival a constant fight against an invisible threat. Another huge danger is firestorms. These aren't just regular fires. They're massive, uncontrollable blazes that act like a hurricane of flames. When a nuclear bomb explodes, it sets off many fires that quickly combine into one giant firestorm. The heat from these firestorms is so intense that it can melt glass, turn...
I recently saw a water tornado. I forgot where it was. It was by my town or something. It's like by the beach or off the coast or something, but I recently saw a first ever water tornado and I saw a first ever fire tornado. That shit was crazy.
Asphalt into liquid and even weaken the steel frames of buildings.
The
firestorm that happened after the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima destroyed 4.4 square miles of the city. A modern nuclear war could create even bigger and deadlier firestorms. If you get trapped in a firestorm, there's no way to escape. The heat and the winds, which could be as strong as a hurricane, would make survival impossible, leaving entire cities in ruins. And even if you managed to avoid the firestorms, the collapse of society would create a whole new set of problems. Emergency services like hospitals, fire departments, and police forces would either be overwhelmed or just destroyed. The EMP from the nuclear blast would have already knocked out communication systems, making it nearly impossible to organize rescue efforts.
It's like a one-shot kill.
Chaos would spread quickly. People would...
This is why I say hitting a nuke is literally like the coward's button. It means you just can't win a fair fight. So you need to cheat and use a one-shot kill button.
Fight for food, water, and shelter, and society's rules would break down. In this lawless world, your ability to protect yourself and your loved ones from dangers like other survivors would become the key to staying alive. The mental toll of surviving a nuclear war would be devastating. The shock of seeing the destruction of entire cities, losing family members, and facing an uncertain future would leave lasting emotional scars. Fear, grief, and despair would become constant companions, making it hard to hold on to hope. The loss of familiar comforts, communities, and the normal way of life would weigh heavily on your mind. Coping with such trauma would become one of the toughest parts of surviving in this new
Dude, you'd be like traumatized,
making it through
bro. It would literally be like the Book of Eli or some shit. I don't know, like the middle of my nose, my septum, is literally like so itchy. But dude, I would have never want to go through that stuff. That's why right now, it's best if we just work together, you know. I'd rather just chill out, you know, hit your chooch, hit your vape, you know, drink some freaking goddamn whiskey, and just relax, man.
The aftermath
just relax.
Of a nuclear war
you don't need to
would
own
take
the entire
more
world
than just being physically strong. You would need to be mentally tough, able to adjust to your new environment, and determined to keep going even when things seem impossible. The world you knew
especially
would
the new
be destroyed,
creatures that arise,
replaced by a harsh environment where
creatures.
every day would be a fight to stay alive. Nuclear weapons are incredibly powerful, and if the US and Russia went to war using them, the results would be devastating, not just for those two countries, but for the entire planet. The explosions would cause immediate destruction, killing millions in an instant, but the long-term effects could be even worse. One of the biggest dangers is something called nuclear winter, which...
No. That could be. It will be worse. Like, I guarantee you that it will.
Throw the world into chaos. Nuclear winter happens when huge fires from explosions send thick smoke and ash into the sky. This blocks out the sun, making the Earth much colder. With little sunlight, crops wouldn't be able to grow, leading to food shortages and starvation for billions of people. The planet would experience extreme cold, darkness, and the breakdown of global food systems. To fully understand what a US-Russia nuclear war would mean for the world, it's important to look at the science behind nuclear winter, how severe it could be and how it would affect farming, food supplies, and global stability. A nuclear winter is a terrifying event that could happen after a major nuclear war. It starts when nuclear bombs explode, creating huge fireballs that set entire cities, forests, and factories on fire. These massive fires send thick, black smoke and ash high into the sky. Normally, weather patterns help clear out smoke, but in this case, the tiny particles stay in the air for months or even years. They block sunlight from reaching the Earth, making temperatures drop sharply like a sudden, deep winter. The effects of a nuclear winter are similar to what happens after volcanic eruptions. For example, in 1815, Mount Tambora erupted and sent massive amounts of ash and gas into the sky. This led to the year without a summer in 1860.
Mount Tambora, that sounds like a
Temperatures
church.
fell, crops failed, and people went hungry. However, a nuclear war between countries like the US and Russia would be even worse. Scientists believe that the huge fires from thousands of nuclear explosions could send billions of tons of black soot into the upper atmosphere. This would cause extreme cooling all over the planet. With much less sunlight and freezing temperatures, crops wouldn't be able to grow, leading to worldwide food shortages. If a nuclear war happened, the smoke and dust from the explosions would block sunlight. Without sunlight, plants couldn't go through photosynthesis, which is how they make food. This would be a disaster for the entire food chain because the plants are at the bottom, and everything else depends on them.
Yeah.
As crops failed, food would become scarce, and hunger would spread
If the
across the
bottom
world.
goes out,
Even
it's
countries that
donezo.
weren't a part of the war would suffer because global food
Everything else
supplies
is getting
would
fucked
collapse. In short,
The insects and then the animals that eat the insects and then the animals that eat them. So yada yada yada.
Scientists break nuclear winter into 6 levels, from small disruptions to a nearly world-ending disaster. The effects depend on how many nuclear weapons are used, how much smoke gets into the air, and how long the cooling lasts. Minimal nuclear winter, this would happen only if a few nuclear bombs exploded. The Earth would cool slightly, and the weather patterns might shift. Some crops would struggle.
I'm gonna wash my hands. Be back.
But the impact would mostly be short-term and only affect certain areas. Moderate nuclear winter? This happens when a large number of nuclear explosions would cause more noticeable cooling. Farming would suffer more, and some regions would face food shortages. Economic problems could follow as countries struggle to feed their people. How about a severe nuclear winter? This level would cause significant cooling across the world. Less sunlight would mean major crop failures, and food shortages would spread across many countries, affecting millions of people. Nominal nuclear winter. This is what scientists think would happen if the United States and Russia fought a full-scale nuclear war. Between 6,000 and 12,000 nuclear weapons could go off, creating enough smoke to lower Earth's temperature by about 14 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 10 Celsius.
Jeez.
Without sunlight, farming would collapse, and droughts, darkness, and radiation would make survival extremely difficult. Starvation would become widespread. Extreme nuclear winter? Even more bombs would push Earth into a near total darkness. It would be as cold as an ice age, making farming almost impossible. Most people would die from hunger and freezing temperatures.
Dude, that's pretty fucking scary.
Finally,
man.
apocalyptic nuclear winter.
It's because of the fact that it
This
actually
is the
could
worst-case
happen.
scenario. Earth would be in complete darkness for years. Almost all plants and animals would die, and only a few small groups of people might survive in isolated areas. While scientists think this is unlikely, even the nominal level would be devastating for human civilization. One of the most immediate and devastating effects of nuclear winter would be the collapse of global agriculture. The Northern Hemisphere, which produces most of the world's food, would be hit the hardest. Crops would fail on a massive scale due to freezing temperatures, lack of sunlight,
without a
and
doubt.
radioactive contamination. Even in regions spared from direct nuclear attacks, food production would still suffer dramatically. The numbers paint a grim picture. In the United States, the amount of food produced could drop by as much as 98.9%. Russia and China would see even bigger drops, with food production shrinking by 99.7% and 97.2% respectively. These huge losses would lead to widespread starvation, with billions of people at risk of dying from hunger and malnutrition. Countries in the southern hemisphere,
if that happens, you're dying one way or another.
Effects of a nuclear war would still be affected. The breakdown of global trade networks would mean that even nations with remaining food supplies would struggle to distribute them. Economies would collapse, and
because how are you going to get over here and how are we going to get over there?
People fight over limited resources. The famine that follows the nuclear winter could ultimately kill more people than the nuclear explosions themselves. YouTube just dropped a mind-boggling announcement. It is that we get questions in our email training boot interested in the screen. Sign up now because, unfortunately, unlike YouTube videos, the bootcamp is like a Zoom call, so it's limited to just 100 people. Okay, let's get back to the video. Even after the skies start to clear and the temperatures slowly rise, the damage from a nuclear winter would not simply go away. The world would be changed for decades, maybe even centuries. One of the biggest threats would be the destruction of the ozone layer. The massive nuclear explosions would rip holes in its protective shield, allowing dangerous ultraviolet radiation to pour down onto the Earth. This radiation would harm humans, animals, and plants, making it harder for life to recover. Farmlands would suffer as soil quality worsens due to radiation poisoning and the loss of organic matter.
Even does recover.
Even if the climate begins to improve, growing food would still be incredibly difficult. As food
difficult? Dude, growing food would be like virtually impossible. It would be like Matt Damon trying to grow food in The Martian Man. Or The Martian, whatever it's called.
And other basic resources become scarce, society would start to fall
apart. On Mars.
Governments would struggle to maintain order, and people would become desperate to survive. Violent conflicts over food and supplies could lead to even more destruction, as nations and communities fight over what little remains. Lawlessness, riots, and even more wars might follow, pushing humanity further into chaos. The devastation from a nuclear war wouldn't just be about the initial explosion. It would leave behind a world that is colder, darker, and far less welcoming to life. Whole ecosystems would fall apart, economies would crash, and human society itself could break down. Surviving would be incredibly hard, forcing people to adjust to a world that may never be the same. To really understand the damage, we need to look at how nuclear war would change the environment, wreck economies, and put the future of humanity at risk. One of the most devastating long-term effects of a nuclear war would be the destruction of the ozone layer. The extreme heat from nuclear explosions would send harmful gases high into the atmosphere,
we'd literally be getting
where they
cooked
would
by
break
the
apart
fucking
the ozone.
sun.
Without this protective layer, more ultraviolet radiation from
Instant
the sun
skin
would
cancer.
reach Earth. This would increase the risk of skin cancer, eye damage, and other serious health problems for survivors. The loss of the ozone would also harm the environment by damaging plants and disrupting food.
Yeah, that's literally what I said. Like, the ones who are the most lucky are the ones who just get evaporated and don't have to suffer. Everybody else is like literally like playing Ark Survival on like turbo, turbo knocked loose difficulty.
Forests already struggling from the darkness of nuclear winter would be weakened even more by UV radiation, causing many trees to die. Ocean life would also be hit hard. Colder water, less sunlight, and more radiation would cause fish populations to shrink. This breakdown of nature would create a chain reaction, making an already disastrous situation even worse. The damage wouldn't stop at the ozone.
They're contaminated.
A nuclear war would send massive amounts of smoke and ash into the air, blocking sunlight and causing a nuclear winter. Temperatures would drop sharply. Some places could get up to 68 degrees Fahrenheit colder. This extreme cold would throw off weather patterns, lead to long droughts, and making it nearly impossible to grow food. The combination of freezing temperatures, less sunlight, and radiation would destroy farmland and bring humanity
look like
to the
Stalker
edge of
2.
extinction. Even places far from the war zone would feel the impact, because all ecosystems are connected. When one area collapses, the damage spreads, affecting the entire planet. A nuclear war would also destroy the global economy. The collapse would stop global trade, cutting off southern hemisphere countries from important supplies and markets they rely on.
There wouldn't be any.
The US dollar, euro, and other major currencies would lose all value, causing extreme inflation and economic disaster. With major cities and centers of culture, science, and finance wiped out, human progress would stall. Civilization could fall into a new dark age, where technology and knowledge stop advancing. Groups like the United Nations and NATO, which rely on stable governments and economies, would likely break apart,
just
leaving the
disintegrate.
world in chaos. With entire countries destroyed, they wouldn't be able to help.
Probably world wars to
As
fight
a
over
result,
the remaining
chaos would
resources.
spread. With no strong governments, people would fight over the few remaining resources. Society itself would collapse, and instead of trust and cooperation, fear and violence would take over. In this harsh new world, laws wouldn't matter. Only the strongest and the most ruthless would survive. Surviving a nuclear disaster would be
unfortunate
extremely
truth.
tough.
Book of Eli.
After the explosions and chaos, finding a safe place to stay, keeping warm, and getting food would be a
Not
daily
gonna
struggle.
happen.
Temperatures would drop.
You're literally gonna be on some
Farming
DayZ
wouldn't work
shit.
anymore, making survival even harder. Emotionally, it would be devastating if people would lose loved ones, see their homes destroyed, and watch society collapse. The constant fear of radiation sickness, starvation, and violence would take a huge toll on their mental health, leading to sadness, anxiety, and hopelessness. Even with these struggles, there would still be hope. Over time, survivors could start rebuilding society, using skills and knowledge from the
Yeah,
past.
it's a big could.
Small, independent
Assuming they're
communities
not all
might
fighting
form,
each other
relying
like in
on
The Walking
sustainable
Dead.
farming and renewable energy. These groups would have to
Wasting
find a
time,
way
actually,
to
like
grow
killing each other.
food, build shelters, and stay safe in this harsh world. The journey to recovery would be long and difficult, but human
Journey
strength
to
and
the center
creativity
of the
could
earth.
eventually bring civilization back to life. The likelihood of surviving a large-scale nuclear war between the United States and Russia is incredibly low. The immediate destruction caused by the initial explosions, firestorms, and radiation would be overwhelming, killing millions within minutes. However, the long-term consequences would be even more severe. A nuclear winter caused by the massive amounts of smoke and debris blocking sunlight would lead to freezing temperatures, global famine, and the collapse of ecosystems. Ultimately, billions of people would perish, and the world as we knew it would be forever changed. If anyone were to survive the initial blasts and the following nuclear winter, they would face an entirely new set of
I would
challenges.
honestly be surprised if, well, I honestly wouldn't doubt if like maybe like a handful of people died. I mean, died. If like a handful of people survived, but like to make it like the amount of like people at like Hiroshima and Nagasaki that survived, I doubt it, dude. With the amount of technology that we had and how much more probably stronger, more potent, bigger boom boom we've made it.
In a post-apocalyptic world. Society, as we know it, would collapse. Governments would be unable to function. Economies would be destroyed, and the basic necessities of life, such as food, water, and shelter, and medicine, would be incredibly scarce. Survivors would have to contend with extreme cold, a lack of clean drinking water, and the constant threat of disease. Without electricity, modern technology would become useless, and people would have to revert to primitive survival
nothing would
methods.
work, yeah.
Violence and lawlessness would
Not even your
spread
goddamn
as desperate
vibrator.
survivors fought for dwindling resources. Armed groups might take control of what little food and supplies remain, making survival even more dangerous. The psychological toll of living in such a world would also be immense. Survivors would be left to grieve the loss of their loved ones, their homes, and everything they once knew. Many might suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and hopelessness. Surviving a large-scale nuclear war between the United States and Russia would be nearly impossible. The first
shit,
explosions
dude, if I had
and
radiation poisoning and I knew I was about to die, you better goddamn believe I'm freaking just gonna end my life. I'm not gonna want to
fires
suffer
would
like
kill
that.
millions right away. After that, the world would face a nuclear winter, where thick clouds of smoke block sunlight, making temperatures drop and food hard to grow. This would lead to mass starvation, severe damage to the environment, and the collapse of society. Even those who live through the blasts would struggle to find food, clean water, and safe shelter in a world that may never fully recover. The best way to survive a nuclear war is to make sure that it never happens in the first place. No amount of preparation
Survive it, but
can
not having it
truly
happen.
protect people from such destruction. The only real solution is prevention. Countries must work together, use diplomacy, and reduce their nuclear weapons to avoid this disaster. The threat of nuclear war is a powerful warning that peace and strong leadership are more important now than ever in today's dangerous world. Thanks for watching.
I really hope I don't just start seeing this pop up more on my feed. Like, oh, another country's threatening, freaking nukes. Oh, Russia just increased their nukes. They're making them stronger. Oh, Russia's threatening nukes again. Now the United States is, dude, everybody needs to chill out. Oh, man. Alright. Well, just like how they need to chill out, you guys also need to chill out. And you guys need to go, make sure to like and hit the comment button on business basics video. Make sure to do the same thing on mine. Make sure to hit the like, comment, subscribe. Check out my Twitch. Check out the Kick channel if you want no ads. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video.